Hi friends, and welcome to day 4 of our Best Fabrics for Summer event with Ellie and Mac, sponsored by So English Fabrics. Today we are going to be talking about performance and swim fabrics. These are so wonderful for summer for obvious reasons. We're going to go through a lot of those reasons today, as well as quite a few tips on how to sew these types of fabrics. Swim especially can be very tricky, and different weights and those kinds of things. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get into our performance fabrics. Now, performance fabrics come in a very broad range of different types, weights, contents, all different types of things. And so I'm going to show you a few options today, but do be aware that this is by no means an all-encompassing explanation of every single performance fabric that there is out there, because a lot of times from year to year, those contents, those fabrics are changing, they're evolving. It depends on where you live, obviously what fabric is going to be best for the heat or the cold and all of those things. But hopefully what we go through today will give you a better idea about performance fabrics and what they are good for and that kind of thing. So to start off, I've got a couple of different performance fabrics here, and what I did is I used this, which is the wine brushed performance, to make some leggings. Now the Urban Legs by Ellie and Mac are a regular leggings pattern, so what you can do if you want to make athletic leggings is go ahead and size down a little bit if you want that compressive feel to them that you typically get from athletic leggings. Now these right here are fantastic for working out. They're fantastic for heat. It's got a really nice brushed texture to them, which I know I mentioned in one of the videos earlier this week. You don't necessarily want brushed texture fabrics for summer, but I will say that with the performance, where it's specifically made for being in hot and sweaty environments, because it's for working out, that it performed really, really well. I actually took these leggings hiking in Sedona a couple of weeks ago, and they were fantastic. They were not at all too hot, and it was hot out. So that is just a testament to how really lovely and breathable these fabrics are, and the brushed doesn't get in the way as far as like heat retention as some of the other brushed maybe fabrics would. Now your performance fabrics are going to have a fantastic stretch to them, and that's because a lot of the time when you are working out, you want to have either tight-fitting or even compressive clothing. I know when I go on a run, I want to have tighter leggings so that I'm not pulling them up every 5 minutes, and same thing with shirts. I don't want it to get in my way if I'm like lifting or something like that. So that means that they are really, really good for form-fitting clothes. Now this, again, is the brushed performance, and this is a 325 GSM, so that's grams per square meter, and that tells you the weight of the fabric per square meter. So 325 is amazing, amazing for leggings. I know that I can stretch this as far as you can possibly stretch it, and it's not gonna be see-through, and it's not, it's gonna really bounce back into its shape, and that is another reason that performance fabric is fantastic for leggings. The vertical stretch is great, the horizontal stretch is great, all directions of stretch. And so that also would mean that if you wanted to, you could use performance fabrics for tighter fitting dresses, like the Be Captivating, that kind of thing. Actually, this I think would be a fantastic fabric for that particular dress because it hugs the body really nicely, it's nice and breathable, and it really holds its shape really, really well. So with the brushed texture on here, I know I mentioned in one of the other videos that you don't necessarily want a brushed texture for summer. That being said, for the performance fabrics, you don't necessarily have that issue because these fabrics are designed specifically for wicking and breathability. So it's not going to be brushed like French terry brushed would be, where it's going to be really plush and warm. and that kind of thing. This is actually focusing on those performance aspects of the fabric, and so it will be really great for wicking and breathability. So another fabric that is very, very popular for working out is Supplex. Now the Supplex, if I compare these two, and I've made leggings out of Supplex as well, it is so amazing. Like, they just hug right up to your body and they hold on and they don't go anywhere, and they're so stretchy and so comfortable. And again, this is, you've got your horizontal stretch is amazing, your vertical stretch is also amazing. And I would say that the weight on these two fabrics, so you've got your brushed performance and you've got your Supplex, is going to be very, very similar. To me, they feel about the same thickness, about the same weight. So it just kind of depends. I think that with the brush texture on this one, it gives you a little bit more of a matte finish. So if you want kind of a specific look, then you can take that into account. On my leggings, and that's what's fun about these fabrics, is you can really choose how you want to use them. On the leggings that I did the brushed on the outside because I wanted that matte finish of kind of like, I've seen it in a lot of designer leggings, that kind of thing. It's just a very matte, just very, clean and fresh. And I've seen other people, and a lot of people, like to put the brushed on the inside. And that is so that that really nice, soft, fuzzy texture is up against your skin. So you can use either way. They do have a little bit of a different look to them, so you can kind of play with that. The Supplex, on the other hand, is pretty much, from what I can tell, the same on both sides. The color varies just a little bit. I don't know that you'll be able to see that on camera, but it's going to look pretty much the same. But Supplex is just industry-wide well known for being a really well-performing fabric for workout gear. It is also fantastic for if you want to make shorts, like the active shorts that just launched from Ellie & Mac. I think the Supplex would be really, really wonderful for those because of the fact that it is very durable, so it's perfect for kids. It's also got to have great stretch, so it meets those pattern requirements, and it's going to be wicking, so in the summer, if they're going and playing, you don't want to use it for swim, but if they are playing in water, performance fabrics do tend to dry faster. And we'll get into swim versus performance here in just a minute. Okay. So we talked in some of the other videos about meshes, and one of the tips that I was talking about is lining lined bodices with mesh, and that way you not only don't have the thickness of the original self fabric, but you also have that additional support that the mesh is going to give you. So this, for example, is the sunny day that I had showed, and it is lined with power mesh, and that is fantastic because it really helps hold up the weight of the rest of the skirt. So meshes are definitely utilitarian in everyday clothing as well as your active clothing. Now, a mesh, typically if you think of like a power mesh or a power net, it's going to be this sheer fabric, and the power net is going to be a lot stiffer. Power mesh is kind of from what I have read, power mesh is an all-encompassing term for different types of this mesh, and the power net is going to be much stiffer. So if you want a compressive sports bra, for example, if you want something for running, then where you want it to really hold on tight, then power net is fantastic because it gives you a lot less stretch, so it's a lot more compressive that way. So you can use the meshes in a lot of your athletic gear makes as well, and it's fantastic for color blocking leggings. You can put mesh inserts into your leggings, provide some vents and that kind of thing. You can color block any shirts or anything. I've seen and played around with the idea of sewing some of the Autumn Spice tees with mesh panel, using some of the color blocking as mesh, and wearing like a really fun bright sports bra underneath, because this is see-through, so you're going to see whatever's underneath. There's a lot of really fun options with this. So that is going to be your power mesh. Now this is an athletic mesh, And what's different about this one is this one's actually particularly heavy. So if I hold it up here, you can see it's kind of like when you think of the football jerseys and that kind of thing, and it's got the little puck marks, like little holes in it, so it's going to be really nice and breathable, fantastic stretch. But this is not the type of mesh that you're going to want to use in a lining or inside of a bra, a sports bra or a tank top, or if you're doing something with a shelf bra. I know that there's a pattern in testing that has a shelf bra built in and that kind of thing. So this isn't the supportive kind of mesh that you're going to want to use, but this is going to be fantastic for a good sport tank, any type of tank top or anything like that. If you wanted to make a going home sweater or some kind of an off-the-shoulder sweater, a lot of times I like to hack my sweaters to have an off-the-shoulder, and then you can throw it on over a sports bra. This is going to be fantastic over something else, but do be aware that it's got the puck marks in it. So there is that. So another thing that you can use your performance fabrics for, in addition to just your active wear, is you can use it for bands. So a lot of times with, for example, the Good Vibes joggers, if you wanted to do a waistband, I've even used Supplex, for example, which is this blue one again. I've used Supplex for the bands on leggings where you don't even need to put elastic in, if that's something that your pattern requires, because it is fantastic recovery. It is very stretchy, but it really holds its shape well. So it's great for that. Again, that's kind of trial and error depending on your pattern and the ease and everything. So it's definitely something that you want to take into account if you're going to do that, to make sure and test it out first. But I've done it successfully with leggings and cuffs on the ankles and the waists of joggers and those kinds of things. It was fantastic for cuffs and bands, neck bands, all good. And we couldn't talk about fabrics for summer without talking about swim fabric. Now, I know a lot of people have had problems with sewing swim because it is a very, very slippery fabric. I think it's probably one of the most slippery fabrics. But I don't want that to deter you from trying to sew your own swimsuit, because there are lots of great options for and tips for making that swim sewing a little bit easier. There are fun tips in the different patterns. So if you look at the Radical Rash Guard, the Oasis swimsuit, that kind of thing, it will tell you, you really want to make sure and pin and clip. And I cannot reiterate how important it is to pin and clip and those kinds of things with this fabric, especially because it is slippery. But we're going to give you some extra tips and tricks today. So swim fabric is very specific fabric. Now, what I alluded to earlier is that a lot of people, and I've seen this asked quite a bit, ask if you can use performance fabrics for swimsuits, and that is a no. So the reason that you want to always use a swim fabric is because swim fabrics are specifically treated to be able to withstand chemicals like chlorine. So if you're wearing a performance fabric in a chlorinated pool, that fabric is going to break down, it's going to lose its responsiveness and its recovery, and it could become more transparent of fabric, that kind of thing, which you definitely don't want. So whenever you are sewing a swimsuit, you have to be sure that you are using a fabric that says it is specifically for swim. Now, a lot of patterns, and all swim patterns, are going to tell you that you need your swim fabric and your swim lining. Now, swim fabrics like these, you've got the print, they are nice and stretchy, 4-way stretch, but you are going to want this fabric as well as a swim lining. And if you really want, you can use swim regular fabric for your lining, but in my experience, the swim linings are softer against the skin, and especially when you get into having wet fabrics for playing in the pool and that, you are going to want something that is really nice and soft and isn't going to chafe. The swim fabric is not a textured fabric either. Swim lining is just a bit softer. Now, you can find a world of really cute prints of swim fabrics on the So English website. I have two here that both happen to be monochromatic camo. So you can tell that we have a type. My husband loves camo, and so I love to make matching swim or matching clothes in general for him and our son. And so that's why I've got two different camos here. But what is really fun about the swim is that it is going to have great color vibrancy, really fantastic because it is going to be those synthetic fabrics typically. And so you're going to have a fantastic stretch, fantastic color vibrancy, and you will find that even within the swim category, there are some slightly different textures to swim. Now, this isn't going to differ a whole lot, but this swim camo, for example, compared to this one, has a little bit smoother of a texture. This one actually has printed on it that same kind of a mesh pattern, but for the most part, by and large, it's printed. There's maybe a little bit of mesh texturing on the backside, but not much. So most of your swim fabrics are going to feel pretty much the same. They're going to be nice and smooth and stretchy. This one does have a little bit less vertical stretch than this one does. It just kind of depends. So that's why it's always important to read those fabric listings and see what the fabric stretches are. If you have a swim fabric and you're making a swim pattern, likelihood is they're going to work really nicely together. So I used the first camo that I showed you to make the Radical Rash Guard for my son. And what is really great about this pattern is it's just a nice simple raglan pattern, and you've got your side cutouts here, which makes it just super cute and fun and color blocked. And this is something that is really great for him for in the summer because where he's little and he's just running around all over the place, it's hard to keep sunscreen on him. So these rash guards are phenomenal for taking him to the pool. They kind of keep him covered up but still cool because your swim fabric is obviously swimsuit. You know, it's going to perform really well in the water. And I just love this pattern. So I definitely see quite a few more of these. We did just have a sew along for the Oasis swimsuit, and that sew along is also on our YouTube channel, so make sure you head over there and see those. There is a whole broad range of sew alongs there, so if you guys ever have questions on our patterns, that is a fantastic place to look. Diana does very, very thorough sew alongs, and we'll walk you through each step of each pattern. So if you are wanting to try a swimsuit, those sew alongs are a great place to start because she'll walk you through it. So a few tips for sewing the swim, and I mentioned a couple of these yesterday in our Sewing with Slinky knits, but I will reiterate them again today, and that is that you want to always, one, go slowly. Now I'm going to mention that first and probably again, and that is because it is so important with these slippery fabrics to go slow, because the faster you try and push it through the machine, those feed dogs are going to catch the bottom fabric and it's more likely to move apart. If you go slower, it's going to give it a better chance to hold those two pieces that you're sewing together, and you'll have a better likelihood of lining everything up really, really well. If you don't want to risk it, one of my favorite tools ever, especially for swim, is using wash away wonder tape. Now with this one, what I did is at the beginning of every seam I put a small square of wash away wonder tape, and that way when it started into the machine it didn't slip and they didn't get out of alignment for the whole rest of the seam. Now some people like to use the wash away wonder tape throughout the whole seam. I don't really think that that's necessary, because as long as you're pinning and clipping the rest of the way down, you're going to be able to hold those fabrics together. It's just that first initial onset where it likes to really push. So wash away wonder tape, you can get it at craft stores. I don't believe So English carries it, but I know that there's some, this is the Dritz brand from Joann's, but I have also seen a lot of people get some different brands on Amazon, that kind of thing, so you can definitely find it. With your pinning and clipping, goes without saying, but if you're using a serger, be really careful not to go over those pins. You cannot sew over pins with a serger the way that you can with a sewing machine, so make sure and be careful of that. Now, I know a lot of people, when you're using a sewing machine, and I've seen quite a few that don't like to use a serger, and they only like to use their sewing machine. That's to eliminate bulk. So you don't have these thicker serge 4-thread seams. You're going to have a zigzag, and that's going to be able to keep it a lot flatter and that kind of thing. So if you're just using your sewing machine, a lot of people like to use a walking foot. Personally, I use a Teflon foot, and this actually came with my machine, but I've seen them for all the different major brands of machines, and I use this for all my knits. And the reason that I do is because it has a really nice slick texture on the bottom, so it helps slide against that fabric without catching the way that a metal foot kind of holds on a little bit more, and it's not quite as smooth. So this, just even before, way before I had a serger, when I started sewing, I would almost always use this for all knits because it really, really helps with gliding the fabric along. So there's that. And another tip that you can implement is using tissue paper. So, and this is on your sewing machine again. So if you tear long strips of, gift tissue and put it underneath, and I like to put it down and then start the fabric so that the tissue's off the edge, then it's a little bit easier to go ahead and get that fabric feeding through. Now on a serger, a great way to go ahead and get that fabric feeding through is to use a scrap piece of fabric. So I will take a scrap of whatever fabric that I'm using, or whatever fabric at all, it doesn't really matter, and take that scrap and run it through the serger, and then when you get to this edge right here, butt up your new piece, and that will help feed it through. And you can do the same thing on a cover stitch or on your sewing machine, and what that does is it helps your fabric, it helps pull the threads through, so once it catches, it has less likelihood of being eaten by your machine because it has something else working it through. So a starter or a scrap fabric, or I think there's some other names for them that I'm kind of blanking on, but this helps a lot, a lot. Okay, another tip, and I can't personally attest to this one because I haven't tried it, but I've seen a lot of people rave about this for sewing with swim, is to use a glue stick. And some people use fabric glue sticks, and I've seen a lot of other people recommend just a plain craft glue stick to glue your fabric together. And what's great about those craft ones is that they are washable. So once you glue your seam and then sew it, and then you can throw your garment in the wash, your glue should wash out. Now, whenever you are using any kind of mediums like that on your fabrics, especially if they're not sewing specific mediums, I would highly recommend testing it with a scrap piece first. Ideally, if you're sewing a seam and then you, or if you glue a seam and then you sew it, you're not going to see that glue on the outside, but there's always a chance that it could discolor the fabric or something like that, and you definitely wouldn't want that on the outside, the visible side of your garment. So I do recommend that if you are going to try that, to test it on a scrap. You just, put some glue on there and let it dry, and then run it in the sink and just make sure it comes off and hasn't altered your fabric in any way. Alright friends, thank you so much for joining me for day 4 of our Best Fabrics for Summer event with Ellie and Max, sponsored by So English. I am super excited to see your athletic and your swim makes, so don't forget to share those in our Facebook group. We love to see your makes, and we're happy to answer any questions there for you. Don't forget to hop over to the So English Facebook group as well. It is also a great wealth of information for any questions that you have regarding fabric, and we are both happy to help you with fabric and patterns and all of that good stuff. So if you have any questions, leave those in the comments below, and we will see you tomorrow for our final day of the Best Fabrics for Summer, which is wovens, and those are also wonderful. I know a lot of people in the group have mentioned that they are scared of wovens, so I just want to show you how wonderful and easy they are to work with and what some good options are for your summer wardrobe. Thanks so much, and we will see you tomorrow.